Hey everyone, today I'm going to share how ducks can cohabitate in a garden, even in a small urban homestead. Having ducks in the garden can mean disaster. They trample your baby plants, they eat everything, and they make a muddy mess at any opportunity. So, having them coexist in my permaculture oasis took some planning and adaptation, but now they fit right into the system and are actually a critical piece of my gardens. Here, I'm going to show you how to set up your space to gain these benefits while protecting your plants. This is Willow here at Two Toe Farm, named after my handy quack duck. The first and maybe most obvious element of a successful cohabitat is the raised beds and containers that are absolutely essential for annuals and tender plants. They don't need to be taller than the ducks necessarily, but that does help. I ended up using strips of deer netting to give an extra barrier, which works pretty well, but I still account for some loss since Clementine does find her way into the corners or the edges occasionally. This ties into my next tip. Provide some bait or sacrificial plants along the edges of your beds like arugula and kale or other greens. This keeps them distracted from the things like tomatoes and peas and is a great addition to their diet. Ducks are actually quite picky with the plants that they will eat, and each one tends to have their own preference. My ducks love squash and celery, kale, grapes, and tomatoes, but they will not eat berries and only like apple if it's cooked. They also don't like most herbs except for one specific variety of mint, ginger mint, and I'm not sure why. Figure out what your ducks do and don't like ahead of time so that you can be strategic. And make sure that you keep spinach and beet greens and chard out of their reach because it can be toxic if they eat too much. Use more hardy herbs like comfrey and balms and mints, and even creeping thyme on more heavily trafficked areas. They might do some light grazing, but for the most part, they don't cause much damage. I will say though, if you do plant any mint variety, make sure you plant it in a pot in the ground so it doesn't spread out of control. You can also protect some of your smaller plants with little clutches, which are protective domes that go over your seedlings and smaller plants. You can make them out of all sorts of things, and I've used extra chicken wire, but these Dollar Tree waste baskets come in different sizes and actually work perfectly. I plan to add old knobs to the tops for some extra weight and a little extra flair for easy moving, but they also work great to repel rabbits and squirrels from digging things up. Consider using sand, pebbles, or wood chips as ground cover, as grass will not withstand heavy traffic, and ducks will also muck up a grassy spot pretty quickly. Now, the ideal environment for little duck feet is wet, mucky mud, but this is obviously not an option in a small-scale urban environment. So make sure you have a pond or pool where they can float and keep their feet healthy. I love to use older outdoor pillows and cushions in their run or in the space that they're spending time in so that they have a soft space to rest. Mine will go out of their way to sit up on something elevated, even if that means a brick. So I have a range of cushions that I can simply hose off every day or so. If you're curious about this self-cleaning duck run model, you can check out my previous video. A lot of you have asked how it's been working out, and I have to say it's gone pretty well. I added an AstroTurf rug on top of some of the rocks for when it gets too hot and too cold for their feet. This has worked great, just like the cushions, where I can just hose it off every day to keep them clean. You can see here that the run is on a slope so that all the water is draining out into one space behind the coop. And this flows directly into my perennial beds and fertilizes and waters my raspberries, asparagus, and strawberries. This plays into the biggest role that my ducks play in my garden, which is fertilizing. I have installed several systems to collect their poopy water from their run and from their pond to use in my perennial beds. I have drip line that goes all the way around the perimeter, and I can hook my hose pump right up to it when I need to empty the pond every couple weeks. Make sure not to use fresh duck waste on plants that you will be eating from in the near future, however. There is always a risk of salmonella and E. coli when applying animal manure to your garden. Stay tuned for a video specifically on this and the risks associated with using duck fertilizer. I will note, though, that it is actually superior to chicken manure because the ratios are a little bit more in line with what plants need. This allows for direct application without the risk of burning plants like other animal manures. Another thing worth noting is not to plant thorny things where they can get stepped on. This can cause punctures in their little webbed feet, which can get infected, causing bumblefoot. This is what I suspect happened to Pomelo, who got a severe case of bumblefoot in our first summer with ducks. There were some raspberry canes on the other side of the fence that occasionally made their way into the yard and trampled. Because Pomelo already had a unique walk and gait, we didn't notice it right away. So the infection actually got to the point of requiring a toe amputation, thus two-toe farm. Now we check their feet a couple times a week at least. Another benefit to having ducks in the garden is pest control. I always put them in the garden beds before I do a planting to give them a thorough chance to find some slugs, grubs, and other threats to my seedlings. They also eagerly wait by my side as I pick cabbage worms from my brassicas, and my guard goose, Clementine, even keeps some of the squirrels and other small mammals out of the yard by chasing and honking at them. They have amazing eyesight, which allows them to catch things I might not, and unfortunately that means that they can see me through the window when I walk by and honk when they want treats. Having a small homestead means layering and packing as much as you can into your yard. And sometimes that means having creatures mixed in with your vegetables. Don't get me wrong, sharing the space with ducks can be messy and not always easy. But for me, it is worth it to see a thriving ecosystem full of happy little quacks. If you've had ducks in your garden, I would love to hear what has worked well for you and the challenges that you've faced. Stay tuned for more duck-related videos and check out my post for more garden-related tips as well. Let me know if there's other duck videos you'd like to see, or garden-specific things. Thank you so much for joining me along this journey, and happy planting.